Okay, so continuing our lecture in statistics, so we will be treating our data, our qualitative data, to make a frequency distribution table. Now, so again, in our discussion about statistics, there are two kinds of data. One would be the qualitative, and then the other would be the quantitative. Again, if you remember, their difference is that for qualitative, it would be words or letters. So as you can see here on my data, right? This is our data. The data is composed of letters. Again, these letters can be names, can be colors, or whatever category you can think of. It can be religious affiliations. So A, B, C can be answers of their religious affiliations or their favorite color or favorite brand. So it would be words. And then the other data is a quantitative data. Again, in a quantitative data, as you can see here on this Excel spreadsheet, there is also a quantitative, and in the quantitative data, it would be numbers. All right, so what I'm going to discuss today or right now would be FDT or frequency distribution table of a quali. All right, so how are we going to treat it or do frequency distribution table for a qualitative variable? So as you can see here, this would be my data and I have remarks, frequency, tally, and percent. So for the remarks, it would be the letters that we have. So A, B, C, and D. All right, so you're going to just encode it A, B, and C. Now, for the frequency, again, frequency would give you an idea how many this remark that you want to count in our data. So that's what we want. So frequency would correspond to how many are there in your data. Now, at the end of the remarks, we're also going to determine the total. Again, the total in statistics, it can also be n. N corresponds to the number of data that we have in what we're doing. So n is the number of data. Frequency would correspond to the number of your criteria or this remark are there in our data. Now, if we're going to do this manually, we're going to count A, we're going to count B, C, or D is very easy for now because we only have a few, right? We only have a few data. But the reason why we're using Excel, one reason why we're using Excel is because it would make it easier, all right? And another is that if you have 1,000 data, I doubt you're going to count it one by one, all right? So that's the reason why this can be helpful, right? So how are we going to use Excel? So if you're not familiar in using Excel, again, in Excel, if you're going to make a formula or use a function in Excel, you always start with an equal sign, all right? So here, what we want is that we want to count how many A's are there in this data. So that's the frequency again. So if we're going to count it manually, so that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So there should be 9 A's if I'm going to count it, right? So counting manually, there are 9. So if I'm going to type here, again, equal sign would be the first thing that you should type if you're going to make a formula or use a function in Excel, and I'm going to type count. So if I'm going to type count, you would observe that there are a lot of count functions in Excel. So what we're going to use specifically would be COUNTIF. So the use of COUNTIF is to count in this range. Again, this range is your data, the set of our data. How many A's are there? All right. So again, I repeat, COUNTIF would be the blue one is the range, and range, and then the criteria is A. Now, we are expecting that the answer would be 9, all right? But the answer is 0. So what's the reason? It's because since Excel is made for numbers, Excel treated A as a number, all right? So to change that, I'm going to put an open and close quotation mark. So if I'm going to put an open and close quotation mark, Excel would now treat A as a letter. So Excel would count how many A's are there, and the answer is 9, which is what we got a while ago when we counted it manually. Now, so since this is Microsoft Excel, similar to Microsoft Word, we can copy paste. So we copy paste, right? So if we're going to copy paste, you would observe there that the answers are wrong. Okay, why? If you're just going to randomly check if it's correct or not, if you're going to check C, obviously C is already wrong because on these two columns, there should already be two C's, but our answer is one. So what are the reasons? There are two reasons. Okay, so if you're going to copy paste in Excel, please be reminded that what you're copying in Excel is the formula inside one cell. All right, one cell. So if I'm going to copy paste it one cell downward, if you're going to observe the formula here, here's the formula bar. If we're going to observe the formula is the same. Count if A colon H and then A. So what are the two reasons? Number one is that if you're going to observe the formula are all A's. So the criteria are the same, so we change the criteria. All right, we change the criteria. Now again, if we change the criteria, why is it that it's still wrong? So if you're going to again look at the formula and double click it, you're going to observe that the blue box is our range. Now, on letter B, you would observe that the blue box now went down one row downward. It is because if you're going to copy paste in Excel, for example, if I want to copy paste this, I'm not copy pasting the value that I got, but the formula. And it depends on how many cells you're going to move or how many columns you're going to move to the right or to the left, or how many rows are you going to move upward or downward. That would also be that would also be the cells that would move in the formula. So, for example, here from A1, right? From A1, it became A4 because I moved three cells downward. Then therefore, all the cells inside that formula would also move three cells downward. All right? Now, so how are we going to fix it so that this blue would not move? All right? So, one way is to put a dollar sign before and after the letter. Again, the shortcut key that you could use would be to just press F4. All right. Once you press F4, automatically there would be a dollar sign before and after the letter. Now, you would also observe that if you press again and again F4, the dollar sign would also move up until it would be removed. So what we need is that the dollar sign would be before and after the letter. Okay, so what's the purpose of that dollar sign? So that dollar sign now, if you would observe, if I'm going to copy paste again, you can, since this is Microsoft Excel, you can use the shortcut keys, Control C, Control V. Another way of copy pasting would be this small box on the lower right portion. So once your cursor changes, you press and drag. All right. So you would observe now that the in the formula bar, the blue box is not going down one cell downward depending on where we copy paste it. But why is it again all are nines? It's because you would again know what there are two reasons a while ago. So the second reason is because the criteria are all A's. So if I'm going to change the criteria to A, B, and C, A, B, C, D, I mean, you would now see that Excel is counting how many B's, how many C's, and how many D's are there. But, right? There's a but. But if you're going to check, okay, and do this formulas for a million or 1,000 remarks, right? For 1,000 remarks, I doubt you're going to do that because it's very tedious. You're going to change the criteria one by one. So why not, instead of typing the criteria, we're going to use A7, where my criteria was encoded. All right. Now, you would observe here that in A7, since I changed A7, the answer is still 9. All right. So if I'm going to copy paste it, yeah, and then therefore, what we did was in this formula, it is in array to whatever is placed here on this 4 rows and whatever is placed on A7. So the value of my frequency on B7 would depend on what's ever written here and here. So if I'm going to change it, for example, I want to change it to all B's, you would observe that it also changes because it is in array on whatever the value is here. Similarly, again, since it is also in array on our data, so if you have a mistake in encoding your data, you don't have to worry because the values would also change. Now, so for the total, we can get the sum of the frequencies. All right? All right. So if you get the sum of the frequencies again, equal sign, you type the word sum or the function sum, and we select the data that we want to add. So you get 32. But the problem here is if we're just going to get the sum of our frequencies, how sure are we that all of our data were counted, right? All of our data were counted. So again, that's you can use sum, but it's much better to use count. So what we're going to do is going to count how many is our data. But we're not just going to use count, all right? What we're going to use is count A. So in count A, what Excel would do is to count how many cells in our data that's not empty. So once you press enter, you would observe it's 32. Again, it's equal if we're going to get the sum, meaning all of our data above were accounted for. Okay? Okay. So now for tally. All we need to do for tally would be if you want to do it manually, you can just type any letter that you want. For example, we use X, right? We use X. So we're going to type 7x, all right? You can do that if you want. Again, but the only but my always argument is that what if it's a million or 1,000? I doubt you're going to do that. So we can use again another function. Again, in doing a function or a formula, we always start with an equal sign. And the function that we're going to use is repetition or REPT. So we're going to repeat what? So according here, we're going to repeat the text, and the text that we want to repeat is X or any letter that you want. And the number of times would be again, we're going to set it on an array to whatever is written on or whatever we got on B7. Right? So you would observe after pressing enter your X now, there are 10X depending on how many is this. Again, it is an array on B7. So if I'm going to change it to C, you would observe that the tally also changes. Now we can copy paste this, then as you can see, there's already a tally for all of my frequencies of my 4 remarks. Okay? And then next is the percent. Now, if you want to know the percent, isn't it the formula in solving a percent or what's the percent of A's in our data? Isn't it what we do there is we divide the frequency or how many A's are there to the grand total to 32. All right? And then, and okay. So, can we copy paste it? So, if we're going to copy paste it, we would observe it's wrong. Why? Because again, the formula is 10 or the frequency of A divided by 32. So the formula for the second should be the frequency divided by 32 again. So you would observe here, the red now also goes down because once you're going to copy paste, all the cells inside the formula would also move. So if you're going to check for C, the formula is 8, that's correct, but you're dividing it on a blank cell. Similarly on 7. So that's the reason why you got this value. So what are we going to do to fix it? So all we need to do, since we're dividing again and again on 32, is to put a dollar sign on B11 or where 32 is. All right? So if we're going to copy paste it, you would observe here now that it's already correct. Again, one way to check if it is correct, since this is percent, then therefore if we add all the percent, it should be 1 or 100. Now you would say, sir, you would say that now it's not percent. So we can press this. Okay. And if you want to add the decimal numbers, so since it's better to have two decimal numbers, so that would be our answer. All right. Now, so before we finish the frequency distribution for a qualitative variable, we also need to present it in a table. All right. For a qualitative data, the table that we're going to use, okay, is a pie graph. So how are we going to do a pie graph? So here we go to insert, and then there would be charts, the recommended charts for you. And again, what we're going to use is a pie chart. All right. Any pie chart would do, right? Any pie chart would do. Now, on the chart styles, there are different charts that you might want, but you would also observe that in picking the chart styles, some of them would give you the percent. All right, would already give you the percent. But you might also want other layouts. So here in the quick layout, there are other layouts where you can choose. In the pie graph, it can be shown to you that the remarks and the frequency, or it can be the remarks and the percent. So that depends on what you need when you're going to present your data. All right. So the next the next topic that I'm going to discuss would be a frequency distribution table for a quantitative data. Okay.